Everyone's here? So, we're going to offer our respects to our teacher, as I have many times. Wow, interesting introduction. Ramananda Prabhu, are you comfortable in the sun? Okay.
You can come over here if you like. Get out of the sun. Till the sun moves.
Yes. So I have mentioned to you many times that I have many teachers in my practice, and one of my teachers that is very dear to me and dear to my heart and has made a huge impact in my personal spiritual journey. You can sit up here, Moses. Moses, you can sit here.
I got some cramping issues.
Okay, sure. If you're comfortable. So I was mentioning that I've had many teachers in my life, and I've introduced you to some of them. And Niranjan Swami is one of those teachers in my life who has had a big impact on. Particularly, I mentioned that many of you know I didn't grow up making choices in life. I didn't have a choice on what I ate, where I slept, and what I studied, what I wore. I had no say in anything that happened in my life, starting at a young age. So when I went through a crisis of trying to find out what is it that I want, who is it that I am, and what is it that I believe in, and things that I saw, things that I've heard, there are some incongruencies. But then when I was serving Maharaj when he was young, I was still a teenager, and I remember at that junction, I had experienced what is Vaishnava compassion. We talked about what is compassion, but what is true Vaishnava compassion, and what is a Vaishnava that is not affected by, the flaws that humans are bound to make. And so he was one of those personalities that helped me to make that decision. And he didn't say anything. He didn't say anything.
Probably the same thing happened today.
It was just the way he was, and him just putting his beads on my head when, I was deciding whether bhakti was going to be my path or not. So it was a big turning point, and I always felt indebted to Maharaj for making sure that I got a glimpse of what a bhakti practitioner truly is. And that was huge, huge. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. Many of you would not be here either. So I think it'll be nice if all of you don't mind to fold your hands. We're going to offer him our respects. Please repeat after me. Om Agyana Timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Thank you so much. So let's give him our heart, and the way to receive the heart is through your ears. And if there's a way you can shut off your mind for a second and open up your intelligence and your heart, and let's listen to what Maharaj has to share.
What would you like me to tell them?
Whatever you want to say, Maharaj.
I'd like to tell them a story. Story I like telling. People who are embarking on the path of chanting Krishna's names. Of course, I'm still embarking on the path of chanting Krishna's names, even though it's been 50 years. It's a long path, it's a long journey. But Krishna is very kind. He helps us. He says that he gives the help from within the heart to those who are endeavoring to come to him. He also gives help from within the heart, and he also, as Prabhupada used to say, if you take one step to Krishna, he takes 100 steps to you. So it's a growth that everybody who embarks on the path of bhakti has to experience, is coming closer to Krishna. And this story, I don't know, maybe you've told them, probably tell stories too, right?
I do. I'm not sure which one it is.
It's about a disciple who wanted to get a special instruction from his spiritual master.
No, I didn't tell about this.
No? Uh-huh. Yeah, there's a story about his disciple who wanted to get something very special, a form of instruction from his spiritual master. And he was actually wanting to use that instruction as a way of being close and confidential with the spiritual master. And there were some other hidden motives also. He wanted some recognition, because if someone is close, then there's a certain amount of recognition that one may get in the eyes of others. So he asked specifically, can you give me some confidential instruction? And spiritual master, he instructed him about chanting Hare Krishna. And told him that essentially that by chanting Hare Krishna, one can gradually purify one's existence and awaken one's eternal constitutional nature. And he recommended that you begin immediately by chanting. So it wasn't a detailed instruction, but it was enough for him to feel a sense of confidence that he had got something confidential, which is what he wanted. And then after receiving these instructions, he left the ashram. And as he was walking, he came across some washerwomen who were washing some clothes. If you go to India, you see a lot of the women, they go down by the river and they beat the clothes. So he saw some women washing clothes along the river, and they were chanting Hare Krishna. And immediately he felt, have I been betrayed? I thought I got something very confidential. And my spiritual master told me that this mantra is very confidential and it will reveal my eternal spiritual identity. But here, just shortly after getting these instructions from my spiritual master, I'm coming upon some washerwomen and they're chanting Hare Krishna while they're beating their clothes. So he just dismissed it as maybe something that was just a fluke. He didn't consider it to be so serious. But as he continued walking, he saw some fishermen along the river, and they were pulling in the nets. And while they were pulling in the nets, they were chanting Hare Krishna. And by that time, by the second exposure of of hearing others chanting Hare Krishna, he began to question the validity of the instructions he received, at least in terms of its confidentiality, because he couldn't understand why would he specifically request something confidential that he could embrace, a personal instruction that only he knew about, and yet already he saw some village women and fishermen chanting Hare Krishna. And he continued walking and he saw some boys playing, and the boys were playing with a ball. They were throwing it back and forth, and they were chanting Hare Krishna. Finally, he realized that I have to go back and straighten this out. I thought that I had something very confidential, but now I'm seeing that many people already know about this before me. How is this so confidential? So he went back and disclosed his mind. Went back to the ashram and disclosed his mind to the spiritual master. The spiritual master, upon hearing the concerns of his disciple, he didn't really deal with the question. What he did is he went back and took out of his room, he had something which was a touchstone. And he began explaining to him what the capabilities of this touchstone could do, that it was like a wish-fulfilling touchstone that could really satisfy all of one's desires if one properly understood the potency of the touchstone and understood the history behind it and understood everything else, the means by which one could get the fulfillment of those desires. So he handed this touchstone to the disciple. He said, you go back and this touchstone you now know, I've explained it to you, is very valuable. And go back to those who you saw chanting and see if they can appreciate its value and give you something of equal value in return. That was his instruction. So as he was walking, he went back to the place where he saw the village women washing the clothes. And he told them that he had this touchstone, and the village women looked at it. And they asked him if they could appreciate its value and give something in return for the touchstone. So the village woman, immediately one of them reached out, grabbed the stone, and started beating clothes with the stone. She thought that's what its value was. And then he realized that I'm not going to get very far with these women. They don't really appreciate the value of the stone. And he didn't understand its value in the way that he understood. And he went to the fishermen and introduced the same to the fishermen. And the fishermen looked at the stone, and one of the fishermen took the stone and used it as a weight on his net, threw it out in the water. So he said, no, give me the stone back. And they went to the boys, and he tried to get something of commensurate, something of equal value to the touchstone from the boys. And one of the boys took the stone and immediately began throwing it to his friend like a ball, back and forth. And he took the stone back and he went back to the spiritual master, and the spiritual master asked him, were they able to appreciate the value of the stone? Did they give you something of equal value in return? He said, no. He said, similarly, many people will chant Hare Krishna, but they'll remain indifferent. So, from that story, we get a little sense that there's a great value. In fact, there's a verse in Chaitanya Charitamrita which describes the glories of chanting Hare Krishna, is that one can understand the truth and beauty of Krishna's name by hearing the revealed scriptures from the mouths of Vaishnavas. There's no other way to taste the sweetness of Krishna's name than in this way. Krishna's name can fulfill all desires. Krishna's name is non-different from him. Krishna's name can reveal one's eternal relationship, his constitutional relationship with Krishna. It's not just simply a mantra for controlling the mind, but it has a much greater effect for those who understand the purpose and those who understand or hear the glories about chanting Krishna's name, and who, with their heart, give their heart in trying to fulfill their actual ultimate goal of chanting. But if we chant Hare Krishna and remain indifferent to the name, then we may not begin to realize, or it may take some time. There's always benefit from chanting Krishna's name, but we may not be able to appreciate the full value of the name. But the more we hear about the name, its potencies, then the more the desire. You must have told them the verse, Chaitodapana Majanam Bhava Mahadevagni Devagni from Shikshastakas.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Cleanses the heart. Cleanses the heart from dust accumulated. So I mentioned this, I thought of this as you were coming, that this would be a good introduction, because this is Lord Chaitanya's abode. Lord Chaitanya appeared in this world to Namo Mahavaranyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate, to give pure love. Pure love. And that pure love, of course, he gave freely. And all he asked was, here, simply take this name. Srila Prabhupada explains that when Krishna came 5,000 years ago, he set a condition. He said that first you surrender to me, and I'll deliver you from all sinful reactions. But he decided to appear again. And this time he appeared as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and he took away the condition. All he asks is you simply take this name. And the name, being non-different from him, will actually gradually reveal that first is the name, then it's like the budding of a flower. If you have a little bud, you see the bud, but as it continues to grow, then the bud grows, and you can begin to understand the form, or then the qualities, and then the actual pastimes of Krishna, which are all manifest in his name. So this is Lord Chaitanya's abode, and he came to give the name. You are all very fortunate that you've actually been exposed to the name. And whatever means that you've been exposed to it, just don't remain indifferent to it. Many people can chant, but if they remain indifferent to the name, then it will take time before the name will actually bear fruit. But the more you hear about it, and you try to absorb your mind and understanding that this name and Krishna, they are non-different, then cleansing takes place in the heart. It takes time, it takes a process, it takes desire. Desire is the eternal companion of the soul, and this desire has to be brought out. Catalyst, just like fire is inside wood. Fire is inside wood, but it has to be drawn out by the catalyst, by being put a flame against the wood and the fire comes out. So in the same way, love, Nitya Siddha Krishna Prema Sajja Kabunoi, Shavanadi Sutta Cheti Kore Udoi. That love is there, eternally situated in the heart of every living being. Doesn't come from any other source, it's already there. But it needs a catalyst to bring it out. Catalyst is in Krishna's name. This is what I thought I would share, especially in Lord Chaitanya's abode. I'm not here to give a long lecture. I'm here to get to know you. Maybe if some of them have some questions about something, maybe you can introduce them to me.
Yes. This is Ramananda Prabhu. He lives in Radhadesh.
This is
Ramananda. He lives in
Ramananda.
Radhadesh. Kamala was his wife. She left. She was the one that used to keep the community in Europe together.
Uh-huh. Is that who you told me, you wrote to me about? Kamalama?
Manjari.
Kamal, huh? Yeah, I'm sorry about this construction. I didn't plan on it. Had to talk a little bit louder.
And then we have Balaram. He's from the Atlanta ashram.
Uh-huh.
We kidnapped him from the university.
Oh, really?
It took 5 years.
You kidnapped him from the... Can you explain?
We had a bhakti yoga club there.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, why don't you tell us the story?
He threw a net out and I got wrapped up in it.
Uh-huh.
5 years later,
You weren't used as a weight, were you?
yeah, we had a really nice club at the university where we used to teach every week, and we had this nice sangha, and it just totally blew me away, and I got interested.
Uh-huh.
There was talk of an ashram, and
You didn't finish school?
I did.
Oh, you did?
Interesting part of his one is that he was going to UC Berkeley, and his dad's a professor at Tech. And, you know, in their family, they're all educators, military background. So he was at UC Berkeley, he was thinking to get to the top. And he was always a straight A student.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, what next?
What's after that?
What's after this? And I think he didn't have an answer. And then he had a little crisis. He didn't want to finish school. His parents said, you have to finish school. He says, okay, then I'll go to Georgia Tech. And then he finished school at Tech. So now they're happy. Somewhat.
Graduate.
Yes.
Now they're happy somewhat.
Somewhat. He said he finished school.
Uh-huh.
He has to have a degree
Uh-huh.
from an Ivy League school.
There was a devotee who was just here. His name was Dhananjaya Pandit. He stayed with me for a few weeks. He also was in the same situation. He was a Yale graduate. And right after he graduated school, because he was going to the club I was doing at Yale University, he moved into the temple.
Oh, wow. Okay. And then we have Nate. He's from Alabama, Decatur, Alabama. Very sweet Vaishnav. And he's in the ashram in Atlanta. He spent a little bit of time in Dhanavir Maharaj's ashram.
Rupanuga College?
Yes. And then he's now fully based in Atlanta. He's our book distributor. It's one of our legs of our ashram to distribute books.
Uh-huh.
So
He goes out and distributes books?
Yes.
Really? Regularly?
Yeah, we're not doing catering.
When?
We do catering at the
Uh-huh.
university.
Uh-huh.
Help out with that.
In Alabama?
In Atlanta.
Oh, Atlanta.
And then we have Amelie.
Hare Krishna.
She works for the city of Belgium, working on their web design and marketing. And Ram and Amelie, they're partners. And Ram is the son of Ramananda and Kamala Manjari.
Uh-huh.
And they met at our retreat in Radhadesh. And now these two are the ringleaders to make sure of Kamala's departure to the communication and keep the community together. And they organized last year's retreat and they did a really phenomenal job. She's extremely efficient. Her family are in the business industry. Yeah, very competent. Both Ram and Amali. And then you met
How many retreats do you have a year?
in Bangladesh. I used to have 2 in Europe. So this year I'm only gonna do 1. It's too much traveling for me. Bulgaria, Netherlands, and Luxembourg, and Belgium.
Uh-huh.
And Keshavi you met.
Yes, we met in Hartford, East Hartford.
She's head of the community in Connecticut now. She's very active. Every weekend they're feeding at least 100, 200 people prashadam in Bernard Park? Bernard Park.
Uh-huh. Middletown.
And she's leading the Sangha there. Her house is like an ashram. They have kirtans every Fridays?
Just starting up.
Fridays. And professionally, she makes healthcare policies for the federal government.
Federal.
Yes, Obamacare. And yeah, she also took, few notches down so that she can spend time doing her dharma work, which is to serve others, to build a community. So that's Keshavi.
100%.
And then you have Lakshmi Devi, or Anne, formerly, a yogi named Lakshmi. She is a healer. And she has her practice all over Europe. And so she is now our leader to open up because she's in the family of diplomats. I think it's your father, right? Or I think her husband or her father, I'm forgetting. Is a diplomat. So then she's in charge of opening up more community centers in all over Europe. Worldwide. So yeah, she's really, really fired up.
She travels?
She travels a lot. Yes.
Be
She's
careful.
incredible.
Take it from somebody who's traveled a lot. It takes its toll.
And then we have Lenneke. Lenneke is from Den Bosch, which is another city in Netherlands.
Uh-huh.
And because Netherlands, we have a community in Eindhoven, pretty good community. She's not here right now. Last time I went and she came to a retreat in Bangladesh, and she caught on fire. And then she came to the retreat. Ramananda introduced her to the retreat in Eindhoven. And then one evening we were just sitting after the retreat, and I said, Lenneke, we need to take this bhakti message to the world. So I'm going to come to your city, and I'm going to give you, 6 hours? Or 12 hours. I'll give you 12 hours to open up your city. So in 12 hours, she brought about 38 people.
38 people in 12 hours?
In 12 hours.
What did you do?
She just went crazy. She didn't sleep at night. The instruction was given to her at like 11 p.m. So she stayed up all night, messaged all the groups and invited people and organized everything. And then in about 12 hours, we had about 38 people in her house, and ecstatic kirtan class and a fire ceremony. So that's Lenneke for her.
Uh-huh.
She's a firecracker. And then we have Mantrini. Mantrini I met through one of the Zoom classes. And we just
During the pandemic?
Yes. I used to do the French classes on Zoom. And then I met her through that. And then she got initiated by Kadamba Kanand Swami. And she's been traveling with him, was with him in Vrindavan. And she's always been she's an activist. she has to go front line and do something. And then she saw what we're doing, and she's like, I want to plug in. So she's been traveling with us from Eindhoven to Den Bosch to Vrindavan to Rishikesh to Mayapur. So she's part of the team to create a revolution in Europe. And then we have Anandini. Anandini is
I think I know Nandini.
okay. But from just from my
I think
side,
she'd be embarrassed if you introduced her.
but she's always finding people and connecting people. Man. That's like the quality of Anandini. She's a glue. She's a connector. And then we have Moses. He has many talents. He was our head cook, running the university catering services, and
In Atlanta.
in Atlanta. Originally from Queens, New York. Really nice. And then we have Drew in the back. Drew is a former, still is an actor, and he also he's made his own film that is being played in different places. He loves acting. He didn't want to get what is the term? What is the term that we say? Zapped? No.
Oh, the jab.
No, he didn't want to get jabbed, so he they fired him from the movie industry. And then
What's job mean?
They didn't fire me, they just not participated.
participated.
I choose not to participate, right? The
So
jab, vaccination.
Oh. You didn't want to get one.
No, because they mandated it.
Uh-huh.
Mandated across the entire film industry. So you couldn't even participate. You couldn't even audition for these television and shows and movies without getting it. So I chose to opt out.
So he's not activated. That's the word I was looking for. He's not
We
activated.
do independent filmmaking instead. We're making an incredible piece. We're documenting this entire experience in India, which has been my first time in India. It's quite the experience. And to be able to document it and film it, and Veda's got such a cool story. I'd like to make a film out of it to put in film festivals.
So he met Gauravani at the Shivananda Yoga Ashram in Bahamas.
I remember when they went there. Radhanath Swami went there too, didn't he?
Yes.
Gauravani goes once a year.
So Gauravani met him. They connected. Gauravani connected him to me in Atlanta, and now he is hooked.
Look to him. I like him. Yeah.
So he's the manager of the whole video team that's traveling with us.
Uh-huh.
And then you have to introduce her, Drew. I don't know.
Jamuna?
Jamuna.
She's been with the community for 10 years. Yeah. And she's joining us today. We invited her. It's my birthday today as well, so I wanted to make the party as big as possible. So invited her along.
Where's the cake? Where's the cake?
Where's the cake?
We had a plan to throw him in the Ganga.
So Jamuna's been a party with me for a long time. She decided to tag along today and join in on the fun.
Did I miss anybody? Oh, the Nishinga, the video crew, the Mayapur video crew. Nishinga, Akash, and Sufal.
Hare Krishna. Do you know them from before, when you were in Mayapur?
Yes, they knew me. I didn't know them so well, but
They knew you.
so we reconnected. Any questions, guys? This is your opportunity to drill the Swami with your spiritual pleasures.
As this is the first time I've been sitting and speaking to an English-speaking group since I can't remember. So it takes me a little while I'm used to speaking in fragments.
Also, just to briefly, Marge, you heard of ISKCON because you have seen many temples. He is known as the most
You got me
The most
wondering too. Most fallen?
the most expert in community building and building Vaishnava spiritual relationships. He is, if you look at the community that ISKCON has worldwide, and where Maharaj is, I have one.
Goes to a different camera.
If you look at ISKCON, it has different countries all around the world. But if you look at the community that Maharaj personally had built in Ukraine primarily, and of course he traveled, he can tell you all these incredible CIA stories of, sneaking books into USSR and meeting with KGB agents and like super incredible, Double O 007. That's a movie for you. ISKCON, Hare Krishna 007.
Many people have told me that I should write a book, but it's I forgot. It's 35 years ago.
So anyway, it's incredible what his background is and the risks he has taken to spread the message of love, the message of bhakti. And primarily more recently in the last 30 years, he's so focused in building real, genuine spiritual relationships, like the master at it in this whole of ISKCON. He organizes these festivals. There's I was told about 20,000 devotees who just come and just pour their hearts out in such deep spiritual connection that one of the guys that attended from Atlanta, he's Ukrainian. He told me when he went to the temple, he almost felt like he was floating. And the guy is like, you met Stan. He's brute, he's solid. He said, Veda, I was floating the whole time I was there. So much love, such deep connections, such meaningful, mindful relationships. So Niranjan Maharaj is actually is known all worldwide within the world of ISKCON and outside as well as the person who is a true community builder. When we talk about community builder, like real heart-to-heart relationships and communities. And it's another reason what attracts me to him a lot because, I love communities. And he's created his own where there's thousands and thousands of devotees. And so whenever I think of communities, I think if Maharaj can do it and he's shown the way, it's possible, it can be done. So it's another source of my inspiration to, build these bhakti communities all over the world. And so that's his main expertise. How to cultivate pure spiritual relationships, very authentic, genuine relationships, and thrive. Not be stagnant, but thrive. So this is it. So you had questions.
One of my questions is, what was a motivation or motivations for you to accept disciples, to become a teacher of bhakti?
Well, I was asked to do it not long after Srila Prabhupada departed. And, but that didn't motivate me. I took some time. I wanted to go in deeper into my own heart and to really establish what I felt would be the strongest connection so that I could be effective because if I want to help people, I want to be effective. And one of the things I began to realize is that what Srila Prabhupada, his compassion was just so deep. And he was, I did not associate him with him that much. I saw him maybe about five times. And in fact, just this morning, somebody sent me a picture from Philadelphia. They thought it was me with Prabhupada. It wasn't. Turned out to be somebody else. But I realized that Prabhupada wants this Krishna consciousness to continue to spread, and he wants it to spread it in the way that us to spread it in the way that he spread it. And I had to serve him and assist him. And that was the connection that motivated me more than anything else, is the desire to do something that would please him. And sure, I could introduce people to Krishna consciousness, which was something that is of value. But as I was telling Veda the other day, my inspiration is that once introducing people to Krishna consciousness, I want to see how they can have a whole lifetime in Krishna consciousness. And it means not just introducing, but giving more and more, and helping others to feel that they can give their lives to Srila Prabhupada, to his mission, and there's a place for them from birth, throughout their childhood, adulthood, and even seniors. There's a place for them in the association of devotees. I was motivated by the statement that Prabhupada built a house that the whole world could live in. And that's kind of what really motivated me, is what Vedasara was talking about, was a sense of community. I became very tired upon seeing people join Krishna consciousness and with ideals, and then losing their inspiration, or being to some degree feeling exploited. Sometimes that happened to people. And I felt that the best thing I could do is to try to train people how to not exploit others. And that would be the best service for Prabhupada. Because if people can come to Krishna consciousness and actually feel a sense of compassion from their peers and from their seniors, and feel that they're actually cared for, that Krishna wants them, Prabhupada wants them. That's what motivated me, because I knew that's what Prabhupada wanted. So after taking several years of thinking about it, I decided after that point that I would do it for Prabhupada. And I have to look within my own heart to see what degree I was successful or not. But Vedasara kind of presents it as if it was me, but I think the best thing I could, I was just there to see it all happen. That's my qualification. To watch things grow, communities grow. And it's ironic that the main place where I invested most of my energy was in Ukraine. So you can imagine what I've been going through in the last year and a half, watching. But it paid off, because they're still thriving. People are still connecting. There's still community. They're very active, and they're very well connected, because that sense of community that grew there gave them the strength to endure and to remain there, despite the fact that it's dangerous to be there. Just yesterday, 2 devotees were killed. I won't go into the details.
Yeah, I was one of the devotees I met from Ukraine. He was telling me that somehow the devotees are so resilient, even though there's rockets flying all around them, buildings falling apart, they somehow are still going door to door and sheltering and checking on the devotees, aiming to make sure that they have food and they're protected. And I was like, wow. If there was a war, someone was bombing, I would run for life. I was like, where can I go and hide? And there are people going towards the rockets flying at them, trying to rescue other devotees. I mean, it's like, who are these people?
A far out story. Devotees, they distribute a lot of food in a city called Kherson. She probably heard it. It's
On the news, yeah.
and it's in the news a lot. They go out regularly and distribute large quantities of it to the local people there. And they prepare the food in the bottom of a swimming pool. Of course, there's no water there. It's where they. And they go out like 3 days a week. And it happened earlier this year. They prepared food for a large amount of people to distribute to, and they were driving out to the spot where they normally go to distribute the food. And while they were halfway there, they realized they forgot Srila Prabhupada's books, and they felt that a very, very important part of their food distribution is to give people an opportunity to be exposed to Srila Prabhupada's books, and they always have a table there for people to come and ask questions about, or to take books, or donate for books, whatever. So since it was such a significant part of their method of distribution, they said, we can't go, we have to go back and we have to get the books. And the devotees were discussing amongst themselves, should they go back or not, and finally decided, yes, let's go back. So they went back and got the books. And then when they went to the spot where they go to distribute the prasadam, that spot where they would have been if they didn't go to get the books was hit by a missile, and everything was destroyed.
Wow.
And they realized that Prabhupada saved us.
So many beautiful stories. And Balaram, any questions? I'm only going to give you one question, Drew.
Oh, he normally has a lot?
Yeah, he's non-stop.
So, yeah, I was speaking with a friend of mine who's in Israel the other night, and I made this post online. It said, it's like no war, right? And so she reacted poorly to that and like looked at me like I was choosing a side, right? The side was like, she assumed that my side was against her, right? And I went on to explain that that's not how I feel. I just I'm trying to wrap my head around war as well. And I guess my question would be pertaining to the Bhagavad Gita, and then all these wars that we're fighting in these wars seem to be increasing in the world. And then so my friend said, what would you do if it was, like right in front of you at your doorstep? I don't have a choice. I have to fight, right? So she, she sees her friends dying in front of her, and she feels she has no choice. So she has to fight. And does that mean like violently? And like you're handing out these books, and then that's a way to fight as well. So I guess my question is how to But pertaining to the Bhagavad Gita, a lot of it was mental, but then also there were bodies laid out in the physical as well, right? From this war. So then how do you fight and surrender at the same time? How do you fight?
First of all, Bhagavad Gita was fought on religious principles. So, and that was, of course, the essence behind Krishna's teachings to Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita, that he had to protect Dharma. And Yudhishthira Maharaj was meant to be emperor of the world and to protect Dharma. In fact, after the whole war had taken place, Yudhishthira Maharaj was hearing instructions from Bhishma Dev, who was the grandfather, and he was trying to wrap his head around it. You know, how is it that so many people were killed in this battlefield just simply to establish me as emperor of the world? He was feeling, you know, that you can imagine the weight he felt on his head to establish him as emperor, to protect Dharma. And Bhishma's response was, "Yasyad kahichid rajan puma veda vihitsatam," that nobody can understand the plan of Lord Sri Krishna, even though great philosophers inquire exhaustively, they're bewildered. So when we talk about Kurukshetra and the fighting that took place in the Battle of Kurukshetra between the Kauravas and the Pandavas, we're actually speaking about a setting that's not replicated so much since then. Although many people will try to put a religious Dharma, protection of Dharma, in the name of war, it's not quite the same as what battlefield of Kurukshetra was. So when I see war, I just see suffering. You know, that in itself is, you know, enough to want to feel compassion, you know, for the suffering of others, because definitely there's so much suffering. And I would say there's not enough people in this world who feel compassionate, who care for the suffering of others. Better to stay focused on what real compassion is, to help others, and keep that as the point of focus, and not lose them unnecessarily in having to take part in fighting in such a war, especially if it's not based on Dharma. So that's how many of the devotees in Ukraine actually, you know, they chose to do humanitarian services rather than to go to fight. And I don't know if that answers your question.
Sure, yeah, the compassion, I think, part of this, if the world had more.
If the world had more people, we can't afford to lose them.
Right.
Can't afford to lose them.
Balaram next, and then you.
I was wondering about, we've been traveling almost 3 weeks together, and I've had a lot of conversations about family and friends, and relationships, and sometimes I've gotten to know myself better. It's helped go so much deeper with people. But then there's also challenges relating to family as I, I don't know how to express that. I feel like it's a universal thing we all go through. It's,
Attachment, you talking about?
you put it that way. Yeah, like having relationships with people who aren't on this spiritual boat, right? Like we're going on a spiritual journey, and everyone else is somehow disconnected. So,
Yeah.
is there anything that we can? What is reasonable to try for in those relationships, or to aim for, or is detachment?
What is reasonable to try for? In other words, to convince them that that the path that you've chosen is something that they should consider for their path in life also? Is that what you mean? Or how to not reject them because they're not inclined to follow that path? I'm not quite sure. I want to make sure I understand the subtle.
Yeah, I was hoping it would make more sense for everyone, but I guess for me, I'm asking detachment. Is it, so, it's about my journey and detach and let things happen, or is it, I should try to bring people with me and try to share?
You should try to bring people with you, but sometimes everybody has to fly their own plane. Sometimes people don't have such an inclination for it. And so you should be careful not to sacrifice your chosen path just because others that you would like to see follow that path aren't inclined to follow. And but at the same time, Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written about these things in his teachings about how to associate with people including family, who don't have any inclination towards spiritual life, but at the same time we have connections with them, and we have to just, rather than just reject them, we have to try to associate with them and fulfill our worldly obligations, our material obligations towards them as well. It's a very fine line that really needs to be drawn, and you have to be careful that you don't uh, become too fanatic. I've seen people do that. They become too fanatic, then they sever their connections with their families, and they regretted it later. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur talks about this, that we do it as a matter of duty. We have a duty towards our family. We have a duty towards others. And but at the same time, we have to internally cultivate a sense of detachment, which is always the best spiritual practice. Because if we do it as a result of an attachment to the body, then it will pull us down, and the consequences will be there. So the detachment is something that always has to be there, but it can't be forced. It's something, but it's something that only awakens in the heart in the one who becomes more and more attached to Krishna. Yeah. Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. By rendering service to the Lord, to Krishna, one automatically acquires knowledge in detachment. And there's so many verses in the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, Vishaya vinivartate rasya dehina. We may attach to sense enjoyment, we may be attached to others, but when we get a higher taste, we can become fixed in consciousness. So detachment is not something that we can force. It has to awaken gradually within the heart. And the best way to awaken it is by hearing the topics connected to Krishna and being fixed upon that. That's one thing you won't give up. There may be other connections you have to keep, you spend time with, perform as a matter of duty, but one thing you don't give up is your attachment to hearing the topics connected to Krishna. Because that's what will help you to gain strength, to become detached, but at the same time, not fanatically averse towards non-devotees or people who have no inclination to spiritual life. We should always feel compassionate to everyone, even those who show no inclination. They're innocent, they're misled, and we should be compassionate upon them. It's those who are envious who the word that's given in the Bhagavatam is upeksha. We neglect them. Those who are envious, those who are fanatically envious and just simply blaspheme, rather than trying to help them in any way, we avoid them because it's in their best interest to avoid them. Because if you try to help them and they're envious, they're only going to blaspheme and become even more degraded by their criticism. But those who are not envious, we should be compassionate on them. Yes.
We heard that
can't make offenses here live or not. I can accept any offenses. Are there any offenses that they count?
Yes, you can make offenses. Offend devotees. How do you rectify it? One person asked Lord Chaitanya the same question. He said he met Lord Chaitanya in a place where he was surrounded by many followers, and he approached Lord Chaitanya and he fell at his feet and he said, previously, I did not recognize devotees. And he was even speaking about Lord Chaitanya. He said, I said many things about devotees that I regret. And how to rectify myself from making so many statements unknowingly that I realize now I have committed against Vaishnavas. Lord Chaitanya's answer was, he said, if a person drinks poison, then he can counteract the effects of poison by drinking the nectar of immortality. He said that's the best way to counteract the effects of poison. So in the same way, with the tongue, if one has found fault and criticized, then with the same tongue, he should use that tongue to glorify the devotees. And this way, he can counteract the pernicious effects of the offenses he committed with the use of his tongue previously by making statements against the devotees. That was Lord Chaitanya's statement himself. It's an answer to this Brahma.
Beautiful one, I love it. Mantrini, your last?
Yeah, I have a general question. I was visiting many communities in the world, ISKCON, but I was wondering, sometimes they say that the communication system is the most difficult
Communications?
in the whole. If you make a community, no? The communication system. You need to put a lot of effort in it. And what is your opinion about it? What do you think about it?
Communications breaks down false expectations. Because if it's not good communication, there'll always be many false expectations. And when there's false expectations, people expect they should get something from something they're doing. And if it doesn't happen, and it continuously doesn't happen, if it repeats itself, then that breaks down communication, it breaks down community. So I see that false expectations is a major contributor also for breaking down community, and the best way to overcome false expectations is by being a good communicator and letting people know what to expect. But I've seen that in many places, that good communication is very important. How to do it? Do it by practicing it yourself, being a good communicator. Being open, honest, and learning how to respect everyone. Lord Chaitanya said, I will deliver anybody who simply chants my name and doesn't fault or criticize others. We have to learn how to respect everyone. That's what Lord Chaitanya's teachings was in Shikshastika, that to chant the holy name of the Lord constantly, one should be able to chant in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer respect to everyone. To offer respect to them means if we see something that we want to tell them, something they need to hear, I need to communicate to them, it should always be done respectfully. And there's a verse in the 11th canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is quoted by one of our acharyas, Jiva Goswami, which he defines disrespect. He says disrespect means, and he quotes this verse, it's in the 11th canto of the Bhagavatam, that sharp arrows that pierce the chest and approach the heart are not as painful as the arrows of insulting words of a materialist, which enter the heart and become lodged there. And he defines disrespect means to willfully cause pain to another living being. With the use of our tongue, if we simply We don't speak them in a respectful way. Why do we have to speak critically? Why do we have to speak in a way that will cause them pain? We can always communicate something that we need to tell others in a way that maintains respect, and that's the best way to keep communication open, and that's what builds communities. But never to cause pain. A Vaishnava will never think of willfully causing pain to others. That may happen inadvertently. Sometimes it may happen. Prabhupada talks about it in the Bhagavad Gita, the offenses that unknowingly committed. But to willfully do it, no, we should be very careful of that.
You were mentioning that you were concerned that the devotees find their way, the whole career too.
Yes. Yes.
In this respect, I'm a disciple of Bhakti Swami. He seems to insist that things should be natural. And as I will say, humility should be natural, and we should also practice in a natural way. So I find, actually, my whole life I find it difficult to find. I've come like in very idealistic way, and after very heavy youth and many difficulties, and then it must work, but I have a hard time to find my natural. So, what is your experience? How?
Natural in what sense? Natural in what you're doing?
And also with being natural and practicing.
Being yourself.
Right. Yeah. You could phrase it like that, but how can we be natural ourselves in the practice? It's not always evident.
Well, firstly, we have to understand ourselves and know how to be natural ourselves.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have a false conception of ourselves, and we think that's what we have to preserve in being natural. Mm-hmm. But first, if we want to be natural, we have to learn how to associate with those who can help us become more natural. I'm sure Bhakti Churu Maharaj, knowing his nature, he always saw the good in everyone. That was his wonderful quality, and that's what endeared. I felt so in my relationship with him. I remember because I was a member of the GBC. He was on the GBC, and I remember once giving a talk, and I was speaking from the heart, and nobody responded, but Bhakti Churu Maharaj responded. He came over and he embraced me, and he thanked me for what I had to say. He thought it was very important that everyone needed to hear, and it gave me confidence in being able to say something that I felt was important to say. So having that kind of association with somebody who sees the heart, understands the motive, and is always careful to bring out the best in everyone, that kind of association is best for being natural. Because otherwise you'll feel suppressed if you're always surrounded by people who are always judging you. Judgmental people, we have to be very, very careful. So Rupa Goswami has said in Upadeshamrita that if somebody is chanting the holy name of the Lord, we respect them. But if their behavior is not so good, we offer respect from a distance. But if somebody's more advanced, they may be initiated, fully engaged, then we offer obeisances to them. But when we find that person who's fully engaged in Krishna's service 24 hours a day and who's devoid of the propensity of criticizing others, then that person we associate with and faithfully serve. That will bring out the best natural qualities in us, to seek out such persons.
That's one of the reasons I joined the Veda, that he installed his rules. We have 3 rules in the community and the Sangha here. And the first rule is no judging. And it works.
It works. It works.
Okay, anyone who hasn't asked questions? Yes, Lakshmi.
Just talk about the ego, because I'm wondering what you see. Sometimes
What stuff?
how to describe ego,
Ego?
Sometimes I'm thinking, okay, is this egotic or not egotic? And it's not always easy for me.
Well, there's false ego. There's false ego and there's real ego. Real ego is Jivera Swarupoya Krishnara Nitya Das. Real ego is I'm a servant of Krishna. False ego is to identify with this physical body and to become proud of my assets. And Prabhupada used to quote a verse all the time. Bhagavat Bhakti Hinasya Jati Shastram Chapastapa Apranaseva Dehanam Mandanam Lokaranjanam. If a person is devoid of devotional service, even if he's decorated with so many good qualities of high birth, high parentage, even if he's an expert scholar, even if he knows all the Vedic literatures and is conversant with them, even if he knows hundreds of Vedic mantras, he said, they're Bhagavad Bhakti Hinasya Jati Shastram Japastapa Apranasyeva Dehanam. They're all like ornaments on a dead body. They simply serve the concocted pleasures of the general populace. So we have to be very, very careful to not become proud of whatever assets, material assets that we may have. And the best way to avoid that pride is by learning how to engage them in Krishna's service. That's real ego. Jivera Swarupoya Krishnara Nichidas. And we need the association of devotees who help us to dovetail our skills, our propensities, our desires, our enthusiasm, to dovetail our desires in such a way that we can direct them positively in a force, in a way that will ultimately be pleasing to Krishna and be pleasing to others. So that's real ego. And false ego means ornaments on a dead body. The temporary ornaments. But if ornaments on a dead body, they're not very ornamental on a dead body, because body has 3 destinations: ashes, dust, or stool. What is the value of ornaments on a dead body?
Okay, the only person that... Oh, you want to ask?
About chanting, because you're saying chanting should not be just feeding your mind with the mantra,
Yeah.
but it should be with the heart. But at the same time, our minds, we are so conditioned, we can't chant with the heart yet. So it's a process to finally chant with the heart. But how do you, stop chanting, just beating your mind up and chant with the heart?
Spend a little time before you begin chanting by opening up your heart and reading something that inspires you. And
Reading something.
yeah, and meditating on it, because you may not be able to carry it throughout all of your chanting, but at least if you prepare yourself in a way that's heartfelt, that this is a prayer, and I really want to do it for somebody else's pleasure besides my own. I know relief from anxiety is a good motivation, but it's not selfless. So if we want to open our hearts for chanting, then we should open it by some meditation before we begin chanting. And let me try to do something that will be pleasing to you, Krishna. And find an appropriate prayer that you read. There's always some very nice prayers, and then put your heart into it.
Okay, should we get to the last couple of questions, really? She always has deep questions.
I don't really have one, but I just thought of one. As Beta was looking around, I could tell he wanted me to ask.
I know.
I asked this of all the spiritual teachers I meet. So, how do you reconcile us being spiritual beings in this material body? How do we maintain our spiritual essence while living in the material world and not getting too attached to the ego? That makes sense.
It makes sense. It's very difficult because it can't be done intellectually. If we try to do it intellectually, we'll be defeated. It has to be done And that's why bhakti is such a powerful approach for spiritualizing our existence, because it goes beyond the mind and intelligence. It actually talks about establishing a connection, a genuine spiritual connection. Prabhupada used to give the example, when you put an iron rod into fire, then it's iron, but if the longer you keep it in fire, it becomes hot, hotter, hotter, and hotter. And if you still think it's iron, then touch it. It burns just like fire. So in the same thing, if we want to become spiritual, we have to keep our association with something spiritual. If we don't, we'll be caught up in the temporary designations of this body, of my mind, my conception of myself, my conception of my attachments, and how much I need these things in order to feel complete. So the best way is every day doing something to connect the consciousness to something spiritual. In fact, there's a verse, it's a very nice verse, that and it's a commentary by one of our acharyas given to this verse. This verse is Smartavya Satatam Vishnu or Vismartavyo Nijatu Chit. That Krishna must always be remembered and Krishna must never be forgotten. Everything else that you do are meant to be the servants of these two principles. And the word satatam generally means always. But in this verse it has a different meaning. Because if one was always remembering Krishna, then why one would have to think about forgetting him? It's redundant. If I'm always doing something positive, then why do I have to worry about avoiding things that are negative? It's redundant. But yet they're both mentioned in this verse. Always remember and never forget. So the word satatam in this verse means not always, it means every day. Every day, if we want to gradually disconnect ourselves and to our false sense, false ego, and become more connected to our spirituality, every day we have to do something that connects us to Krishna. It's called sadhaka. It's called sadhana. For everyone, they can define their own, what their sadhana may be. For some, it may be prayer. For some, it may be chanting. For some, it may be hearing. For some, it may be serving others, Vaishnavas. For some, it may be worshipping a deity. There are 9 processes, 9 angas of bhakti. But if we connect every day with something that reminds us that I'm a servant of Krishna, that over time will have its lasting effect. But to do it intellectually, the illusory energy is too powerful to overcome it by an intellectual process. It doesn't happen that way. It has to happen what Vedasara is teaching, from the heart. Does that answer your question?
Are you all
Okay, that was the last question, right?
Yes, I think everyone got a chance. So thank you so much, guys. Are you all happy to be with Maharaj?
It's okay.
I just want you guys to know, whenever we go to any of this sacred spiritual energy vortexes or the places of pilgrimage, we always go meet with a saint to see the world through the lens of their hearts. And in Mayapur we didn't get to meet, and finally we were able to have our sadhu sangha to meet with a saint. So I'm so happy that all of you got your fill in every place that we go. I think Maharaj has classes online we'll send the link. Those of you, he does ecstatic kirtans, organizes incredible, massive festivals of chanting and dancing, and feasting and hearing.
I don't organize them, Veda.
Your servant, somebody does. Who does the Ukraine festival?
Yeah, devotees do it. They
Okay.
local devotees do it. I don't organize.
Marge doesn't do anything. He just observes it. How's that? But it's, I'm going to send the link, and you guys are welcome to and check Marge out and derive your daily inspirations. Marge, any final words?
Thank you for coming. Give me this opportunity to share a little time with you. I hope in some way I was able to assist all of you on your path forward, your progressive path, spiritual world. Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. His Holiness Niranjana Swami Maharaj ki jai.
Hare Krishna.
Yeah.